So today is just hosted by PAMSA and this Department of Science and Innovation. And yeah, it's a special day for us because it gives us an opportunity to showcase some of the work that the 6 bright young minds that we have with us today have been doing. I'm going to just play a short video clip on our sector just to introduce things.
Wood. We use it every day. In our homes, it holds up the roof. It bolsters the sofa. We walk on it, eat at it, we play with it. In paper, it keeps our to-do lists and colors our birthdays, dispatches the news and holds words we love to read. It carries our coffee and cushions our belongings, protects our pizza, keeps juice and milk fresh. It wipes our tears and mops up our messes. It's an artist's blank canvas, a fresh, clean start. Paper, easy to recover and recycle, for reuse in 1,000 different ways. And the wood that makes paper? It's sustainably grown, renewable, specifically planted, harvested and replenished to preserve and conserve. Together, wood and paper provide careers and livelihoods for thousands, foresters and environmentalists, researchers, machine operators, engineers and recycling collectors. Responsibly produced wood and paper products enrich our lives, make our jobs easier and our world more sustainable. Wood, paper, renewable, recyclable, remarkable.
Unmute yourself. Without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Julie. Julie heads up the PAMSA Paper Manufacturing Association Process Research Unit, and she'll give a brief welcome. Over to you, Julie.
Thank you, Sam. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to this very first webinar. And I'm sure you're all going to be inspired by the enthusiasm and the dedication of our young engineers in their pursuit of their knowledge and their deep understanding and appreciation of what the industry and society needs. We're all aware of the environmental challenges that we're facing today, the impacts of climate change, which have become increasingly apparent and destructive. And the theme of this research is to harness and expand on the potential of trees and their products. Not only do trees sequester the carbon, but it's recognized as the ultimate renewable. We're all familiar with the traditional paper products that form part of our everyday life, but today we will be introduced to new and innovative ways that cellulose can be used to create products that can be used as substitute for petrochemical-based products. By supporting our young engineers, we are developing the skills required to turn products of the imagination into real-world innovation. I hope that you will enjoy all the presentations. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Julie.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sunita Kalan. I am the Director for Sector and Local Innovation at the Department of Science and Innovation, and the Sector Innovation Fund program falls within my area of responsibility. I thought I'd give you, I won't keep you up because I think you're a lot more interested in what you each have to say. So I'll give you a very brief background into the program, where it is currently in its evolution. And then I'm going to hand back over so that you can continue with the core business of today. So the DSI, through various review processes, it was recommended to the department that it needed to work better with the private sector. And one of the programs that were devised, if you like, to meet this requirement is the Sector Innovation Fund. We started the program around 2014, and it is really designed to incentivize the private sector to invest more in R&D. We started in 2014 with 9 innovation funds, sector innovation funds. We currently have 7. They are primarily in the agriculture space, minerals processing, and kind of agro-processing, biorefinery manufacturing. It's aligned to those of you that know the policy space. Our key primary policy document at the moment is the white paper on science, technology, and innovation. This program is aligned to a number of those policy intents in that document, including the need to improve inclusion and increase linkages across the national system of innovation, to expand that system and also broaden the conceptualization of what innovation is beyond just kind of technology R&D, and also increase support for and collaboration with business. What's interesting for us is that the sectors that are supported through these funds were selected through a call for evaluation process. It was an open call, published in national newspapers, so we didn't specify particular sectors, but what has been an interesting learning for us over the last 7 or so years is that a number of these are already contributing anyway to key priority sectors of the department, but also of government, the digital economy, circular economy, the biorefinery type concepts, modernizing agriculture, 4IR, and that's been good for the program because it does show that, it can be argued anyway, that government's priorities and those of the private sector are not that far away, at least in this space, because the research topics and the research priorities are not determined by the department. They are actually determined by the industry associations that we are working with. So that's been quite encouraging and should also be for all of you, because that bodes very well for the future of this space. In terms of achievements, there's at least 300 postgraduate students. On top of that, at least about 50 postdocs and interns that have been supported over the last 7 years. Encouragingly, though it's not as great as we would have hoped, at least 15% of those have already become employed. While we've run this program, we were initially of the view that it would be a much more longer term measure and we wouldn't necessarily see the improved employability. But we're seeing signs of that. So that's also been very encouraging for us. While we haven't quite achieved matching industry funding, we're getting there. So that's also good news for us. I think, Samantha, I'm not going to get into a whole lot more detail. This is the end of our second phase. We're hoping that we're able to secure additional funding to continue with the third phase. So please keep all your fingers crossed so that we can get that. Good luck, and I'm looking forward to some very interesting presentations. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Sunita. Our first speaker is Mashudu Leparama. She is from the Vaal University of Technology, and her project is around the production of biodegradable packaging plastics from dextrin, nanocellulose, glycerol, and polyvinyl alcohol blends. So yeah, there's some big words coming up. But we've asked them to keep it simple for us mortals, so that we can understand and follow along. So please put your questions in the chat. Let's engage and discuss. And yeah, walk over to you, Mashudu.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am Mashudu Leparama from the Vaal University of Technology. I am currently doing my MEng in chemical engineering under the supervision of Prof. Ruto and I am co-supervised by Prof. Foge. My research topic is the production of biodegradable packaging plastics from dextrin, nanocellulose, glycerol, and polyvinyl alcohol blends. Next slide, please. Introduction and problem statement. Plastic waste is now regarded as a severe environmental problem. Most of the municipal solid waste is made up of packaging waste, which is mainly petroleum-based plastics that are non-biodegradable. Almost half of the plastics produced are used for single-use purposes, like disposable products, and they accumulate in landfills and water bodies after disposal, leading to land and water pollution. Most petroleum-based non-biodegradable plastics contain toxic additives such as bisphenol A, also known as BPA, which has been reported to be carcinogenic and poses great danger to human and marine life. These plastics also release toxic and greenhouse gases when burned, leading to global warming. So the proposed solution is to produce biodegradable plastics with similar functionality as that of conventional plastics. So biodegradable plastics are plastics that can be broken down naturally with the help of microorganisms found in the surrounding environment. When these plastics are biodegraded, they are converted into carbon dioxide, water, methane gas, and biomass. So their advantage is that they are biodegradable and compostable, meaning that they can be decayed and used as fertilizer for growing plants. They are from natural resources that are in abundance, such as starch and nanocellulose. They are non-toxic and are environmentally friendly, and they are produced using standard machines for plastics and polymers. However, there's a downside to them. Their disadvantage is that they are too expensive to produce, as they need land, fertilizer, and pesticides for crop growth, and they have poor thermal and mechanical properties, meaning that they are not heat resistant and are brittle. However, these disadvantages can be minimized by blending the biodegradable plastics with other polymers. So as you can see, can you please go back? As you can see, the picture that we have, that is the disposable cup made of polylactic acid. And as time goes on, it biodegrades until it is almost not there. So this is how I believe my research would contribute to science, society, and the industry. In science, it will help with developing new strategies on enhancing the properties of bioplastics. In society, it will help reduce pollution and greenhouse gas emissions. And in industry, it will help reduce the dependence on fossil fuel, as we can now use renewable materials as an alternative. And for sure, the agricultural sector will definitely grow. Next slide. Sustainability of the industry. So biodegradable plastics can ensure sustainability of the industry by making circular economy go round. This is possible as their resources can be renewed and repurposed without needing new ones, making the circular economy a reality. So the waste carbon dioxide will be used in the production of urea, which is one of the best fertilizers, and the methane gas will be used as a biofuel. So circular economy results to almost zero waste. So in the flow chart on the right-hand side, it is the organic recycling of bio-waste, which will ensure the circular economy. First, we will have our biodegradable and compostable end products. Then they will be disposed in bio-waste bins after use. After that, the waste collection men will come and collect the bio-waste, taking it to the industrial compost plant where it will be composted under specified conditions. During that process, the methane gas will be captured. Yes, the methane gas will be captured and used as a biofuel. Then the rest of the compost will be taken to the agricultural sector where it will be used as a fertilizer. And then when the crops have grown, they will be harvested and taken to the biorefinery where they will be processed until we get our bioplastics granules. After that, we can then make new biodegradable and compostable end products. Or instead of taking the end products to bio-waste bins, we can compost them at home and then use them as fertilizer for growing plants. Then when the crops have been harvested, they will be taken to the biorefinery where they will be processed until we get bioplastics, granules, and then after that we can also produce a new biodegradable and compostable end products. Next slide. So these are the materials used that, these are the material that I've used for my project. So I've used dextrine or starch as the main polymer, and then polyvinyl alcohol, which is the biocompatible polymer to starch, was used to improve the thermal and mechanical properties of starch. Glycerol and water mixture was used as a plasticizer. So a plasticizer is a substance that is incorporated in a polymer to make it more flexible. So stearyl alcohol was used as a processing aid, making the mixture not to stick to the machines during processing. And then nanocellulose was added and used as a reinforcing agent, making the whole polymer more strong. Next slide. So this is the experimental procedure. First, the whole materials were pre-mixed and then they were taken to the twin screw extruder. The polymer was fed into the twin screw extruder via a hopper, and it was then meshed and plasticized into a homogeneous polymer with the help of rotating twin screws. Then the polymer came out in a strand shape. Okay, and then the polymer was then pelletized or cut into smaller plastic granules. Then those granules were fed into the injection molder via a hopper. Then they were melted and taken to the mold cavity and will be molded into a desired shape, which is the disposable cup. Next slide. Okay, so these are the results that I got. So on the left, you can see that there's starch blends without PVA. And as you can see, they have poor mechanical properties, meaning that they are brittle and can break easily. And then on the right-hand side is the starch blends mixed with PVA. So as you can see, they are strong and flexible, meaning that they are capable of bending without breaking. So this is evidence that the undesirable properties of starch can be improved by blending or mixing it with other biodegradable polymers such as PVA.
My name is Rachel from Tshwane University of Technology, doing research for Master's Engineering under the topic Melt Processable Cellulose-Based Polymer Blends, supervised by Dr. Washington Mickey. Under this presentation, I will share with you what is all about my research and what the contribution it will have on the science, society, and the industry at large. As the previous speakers has also showed that we have problem in terms of plastics waste management and the detrimental effects on our day-to-day lives. So my research is about, as the topic suggests, is about melt processable cellulose blends. First of all, what is a cellulose? A cellulose is a It's an abundant polymer that can be that is occurring in nature, that can be obtained naturally. So some of the sources of this cellulose polymer includes, for example, includes agricultural waste such as sugarcane, rice, and maize stalk. Cellulose polymer can be obtained from cells, hulls of a plant material such as leaves and roots, as well as stems. As you see on my diagram on the left, there is it shows where you can find the cellulose polymer. On my right hand side on the picture, it shows the chemical structure of my cellulose polymer. Next slide, please. Why such interest in studying, in researching about cellulose-based plastics? The reason why I want to do my research in this field is because of the cellulose-based polymers are biodegradable and they are sustainable. I will share with you what I mean by biodegradable or biodegradation process. Some other reasons that make me to pursue research with the cellulose-based polymer or natural-based polymer are the reasons. The reasons includes the challenges that are faced with petrochemical derived plastics. As you know that the petrochemical derived plastics, number one, there are non-renewable resources, meaning that we cannot sustain them in the long run. And number two, during their production, they use toxic chemicals such as phthalates that can go into the atmosphere and cause the air pollution. Number three, petrochemical derived plastics are non-biodegradable, meaning that they do not degrade under natural ambient conditions. As you see on my picture, all these reasons lead to waste management crisis, also as air pollution. As you see that when these plastics on this picture, when they degrade, the emission of gases of greenhouse effect gas that goes into atmosphere and causes global warming. Let me explain what I meant by that. Cellulose-based plastics they are biodegradable. What I meant is that biodegradation, sorry about that. Biodegradation process, meaning that the cellulose or the plastics material can be converted into products such as carbon dioxide and water. First of all, the plastic material or an object must fragment into smaller pieces before it can be converted into those products such as water and carbon dioxide. So this process, biodegradation process, to take place, you need ambient conditions such as compost or in the soil. On my right hand side of my slide, I have some of the current uses that of cellulose derivatives. These derivatives, these uses includes film making and cutlery, as you see on my picture here. But the uses of these cellulose derivatives, the uses of these cellulose derivatives, they are limited due to their processability. What do I mean by limited due to their processability? Cellulose has high glass transition temperature, meaning that it starts to degrade before melting. Its decomposition temperature or degradation temperature is very close to its melting temperature. Therefore, when processing with high temperatures in the thermal processes, it starts to degrade before melting. On this picture here, I have one of the basic melt processing techniques that used to produce plastics. the plastics or polymers are introduced into this plastic and heated under certain temperatures and molded into different shapes. As you see at the end here, there's a shaping die or tool that can shape it into products in this category, such as tubing and pipes, such as films and sheets, as well as structural parts. But with cellulose, there is a limitation, as I was explained, that it has a higher temperature or higher glass transition temperature to be processed as in such instrument or a machine, as this machine requires the plastic to be in the form of a melt. All right, what is the aim of this research? The aim of this research is to develop or produce a biodegradable plastic based on cellulose derivatives that can be processable through a conventional melt process, such as the one that I have mentioned, the extruder. So the objectives of this research is to investigate the feasibility of blending cellulose ester derivatives with other biodegradable polymers, and to investigate how best can I use biodegradable plasticizers to improve the processability, the thermal processability of my cellulose derivatives. In other words, this research is to develop biodegradable plastics that can compete or reduce the use of petrochemical derived plastics. The application that I will look at with these developed blends is in rigid packaging, films, sheets, and as well as in the moldings. So, in summary, this slide shows in summary the experimental plan of my research. The initial work has been done on the thermal processing of my cellulose derivatives. I have already run some experimental work in terms of producing or plasticizing my cellulose. The initial results shows that biodegradable plasticizer can improve the processability or the mechanical properties of my cellulose derivatives, such as tensile strength and the strain of the polymer. There are other characterizations that I'm going to do. Are based on morphology of my blends between my polymers and cellulose, as well as their thermal processability, thermal properties, and also I will also look at biodegradation tests as how to what extent it will be biodegradable. There are applications that I'm going to look at on the rigid packaging, modeling, and film sheet, as well as agricultural products. These are some of the applications that I'm going to look at as after develop my blends or my cellulose derivatives blends. This is how I believe that my research will contribute to science, society, and the industry. I believe that by the use of biodegradable plastic, it will reduce the dependence of non-renewable petroleum-derived plastics in the industry. Also contribute to a environmentally friendly and sustainable economy. To the science, I believe that my research will add significant knowledge to how effective can biodegradable plasticizer for cellulose derivatives being used, and also develop new biodegradable polymer blends, as well as giving more information in terms of processing conditions such as temperatures of these cellulose blends or cellulose derivatives based blends. And to the society, I believe that this research will help in terms of waste management, as we see that the plastics are all over they take time to biodegrade, and also reduce the detrimental effects of this traditional or the petrochemical derived plastics on aquatic and terrestrial life. As you know, that some of these plastics, they end in our oceans and they kills the aquatic animals at the oceans. So I believe that the biodegradable plastics from cellulose-based derivatives will reduce these effects on the aquatic life and our day-to-day lives. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Farai Machar from the University of Pretoria, studying towards my master's in chemical engineering, supervised by Professor Walter Fokker. This morning, I'll take you through the work I'm doing on the development of a long-lasting mosquito life cycle delivery system based on starch-cellulose nanocomposite system. So moving on, to bring a background to my work, which I'm doing. Samantha. So as a background to my work. So each year, bites from female infected Anopheles mosquito will result in high morbidities as they deposit the parasite inside our bodies. So this results in very deadly virus of malaria being injected in our bodies. So according to the World Health Organization, in 2019, 229 million cases were recorded of malaria globally, leading to 409,000 deaths, of which 94% of this was recorded in Africa, and the children under the age of 5 and pregnant women being the most vulnerable groups. So as we can see, malaria is a medical and economic burden, a huge one. So to combat this, the World Health Organization recommends interventions on the adult mosquito, that is through the use of synthetic insecticides, by sleeping under insecticide-treated bed nets, as well as indoor residual spray. However, there are challenges with this as well, because the continuous or uncontrolled use of these insecticides has resulted to some insecticidal resistance. So another challenge also is these measures, they only focus on the adult mosquito indoors, and they do not cater for outdoor biting. So that determines the limit of what is achievable with these methods. So someone can still, sorry about that. So someone can still be sick, but still using these methods. So moving on, we need to find supplementary measures to combat the spread of malaria. So as I said from the previous slide, the current measures are only focusing on the adult mosquito, but according to from the life cycle of the mosquito, we have got 4 stages, 3 of which are aquatic and immobile. Hence, there is a gap which we can utilize to say, let's look at larviciding, whereby we try to focus on the mosquito while it is still an infant, so that we can try to minimize the adults which eventually emerge and transmit the malaria disease. So according to literature, there are some plant-based oils which have been reported to have a lethal concentration for 50% mortality of less than 10 parts per million, which is quite low and effective. But this data has been reported on a different mosquito species, that is Anopheles aedes and culex, not the Anopheles arabiensis, which is the principal mosquito vector we have here in South Africa. So as we move on, since these plant-based oils are effective, why can't we use them? To answer that, if we apply the plant-based oils as freestanding oils to the water bodies, the plant-based oils, they have got low persistence as freestanding oils because some of them, they are volatile and some of them lack antioxidative stability. So they will not have high efficacy, and they will require very frequent application, which makes the overall thing uneconomic. However, as we look for supplementary measures, we should consider three things, because we want something which is economic, and we want something which is sustainable to the environment, thereby not creating a problem, trying to solve a problem. And eventually it should be sustainable so that we can use it into the future. So this moves us to our next step, which is the Starch-Cellulose nanocomposites system. So now that we know that these plant-based oils can provide a solution, what should we do to improve the efficacy? So this is the proposed plan to say we want to produce a pellet which you've got this plant-based oil. So once we put the pellet inside the water, as it dissolves, it will release the oils, thereby prolonging the efficacy. So this is the overall idea. Moving on your right, as you can see, that is a conventional plastic processing equipment which is already there in industry. So what will happen is we put our starch, our plant-based oils, and all the additives which will be proven to be required, we put them at the top. So the extruder is a common plastic processing equipment whereby you got a rotating screw through inside a barrel which you've got heating elements. So as the material is moving through the extruder, as the chains are rotating, it is melted into a blend which is homogeneous through shear mixing, and then it's forced out as a strand which can then be pelletized. So what happens is, as this is melting and being mixed, the plant oils and the starch have got helices, which forms starch lipid complexes with the plant oils, as you can see between the extruder and the pelletizer which is cutting. That is the helical structure and then the complex. And then we get a pellet which is on the far left. So right there, I was just showing you my pellet. Written end is the one with nanocellulose, and the other one is without nanocellulose. So with nanocellulose, it enables mass production on conventional plastic processing equipment, as well as improving the solubility of my starch. It lowers it down. As you can see on FM01, the pellet is already disintegrated, but on FM01N, it's still intact. So moving on, preliminary work has been done also on the oils using the strain which we have at the Institute of Sustainable Malaria Sustainable Control here at the University of Pretoria. However, this strain is susceptible to the insecticide. So since this is work which is ongoing, I just wanted to show you on the left there, it's your larvae. As you can see, it's very small, tiny particles, tiny organisms which are causing all this crisis. And on your right there, you can see the photos. So what you do basically is you have got your concentrations. Initially, you have your control, then you vary your concentration, and then you check to see how much of the larvae is being killed, and how the adult, which eventually emerges to be adults. In that way, then we can determine how effective our system is. But this is work which is still in progress, so I wouldn't want to dwell much into that. So what are the potential gains which are expected from this work? So firstly, it goes without questioning, if we can lower the adults which eventually emerges, the larvae which eventually emerges as adult mosquito, it will help in lowering malaria transmission, thereby reducing the strain on our health systems, especially if we consider situations where we can have pandemic like this. It will really be helpful. So also we are using environmentally safe and sustainable materials, and the plastic processing equipment which can be easily scaled up for mass production in terms of the success of this work. And it can help to explore new markets for our products, starch and nanocellulose, which we can get here locally available on the market. So moving on, the impact of this work, I've categorized it into three categories: national, industry, and science. This is what I expect or what this work will have an impact on these three different sectors. So nationally, according to the National Institute for Communicable Diseases, there is a vision to eliminate malaria by 2023, which I don't think, because of the pandemic, it will still be attainable, of course. Then, according to the World Health Organization, for you to be certified as a malaria-free country, you need to apply for a certificate. So, in order to apply for that certificate, there are requirements which are needed. So, this method can also help as a supplementary measure towards malaria control to prevent the re-establishment of malaria. And also, it will help towards meeting the Sustainable Development Goals. That is goal number 3 of good health and well-being. To industry, like I mentioned, if this is a success, then it means the materials which are using need to be increased because we need to cater for this new product. Hence, Starch-Cellulose can also get new markets, and there are polymers which can be locally produced. And science also, there's been an information gap on the larviciding of Anopheles arabiensis, so we can get information on that, and also the controlled release, as you can see on my slide. So moving on to the last slide as I will wrap. So now that we know we are working on this work, we need to look at things like I mentioned that are sustainable to ensure that our future we can still utilize the same method. So the polymers, Starch-Cellulose, which I'm using, they are renewable, abundant plant oils. We get them from renewable resources, and the idea is based on a proven technology. So this work is highly sustainable and using environmentally safe options. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's all I have for you. Thank you.
My name is Franco, and I'm a master's student under the supervision of Prof. Walter Fokker. And today I want to share a little bit with you about my project, which is biodegradable fruit fly attractant sheets. Okay, so just to give a bit of background, South Africa is the second largest exporter of fresh citrus fruit in the world, and also the 13th largest producer of said fruit. But tetraphed fruit flies cause the greatest economic losses in this industry throughout Africa. And there are various different ways in which farmers have tried to tackle this problem. One is that they try to introduce natural predators such as wasps, but these are only effective once the fruit have already been damaged. Another is to use myco-insecticides, which is a type of fungus, but these are very sensitive to temperature and humidity. And yet another is to use the so-called sterile insect technique, in which a bunch of sterile male fruit flies are introduced into the population. But unfortunately, this requires that the pests are already sort of managed by conventional methods and requires certain geographical isolation. So by far, the most common way to tackle this problem is through pesticides. Now, despite increases in pesticide use, the overall proportion of crop losses has increased in the past 40 years. And furthermore, these excessive and indiscriminate uses of pesticides cause a whole host of problems, namely pesticide resistance, allowing secondary pests to proliferate. It kills off the natural enemies and vast species of pollinators such as bees and butterflies. So another way to try and combat this problem is to try and use traps. Now there are various types of traps, dry traps, such as that red one in the first picture, which mimics a fruit, so that the fruit flies go and sit on it and it's sticky and they get stuck on there. Similarly, the Jackson trap, which is the second picture, which also contains fly paper. And then there are wet traps, which are like the McPhail trap in the third photo, which uses a wet bait, which is typically a hydrolyzed protein or yeast type of mixture. And then you get things like the easy trap in the fourth picture, which can accommodate both a wet and a dry bait. But the common problem with all of these traps is that it requires a significant amount of manpower to set them up and replace them once the flies have settled on them. And then you have to throw them away, which contributes to plastic waste. So mostly traps are used for census applications. But this is where the novel idea of this research project comes in, to try and create a biodegradable trap. Next slide, please, Sam. So this is a very interesting idea where we try and create a sort of sandwich lure. So the inner layer will consist of a type of attractant sheet. Now, if you look on the left photo down there, that white sheet in the photo is a spongy plastic material that the butchers use to absorb meat juices in their packages. And then we want to place on the outside an insecticidal netting. So that's similar to that red net you see in the photo as well. And when you go to the supermarket and buy mangoes or something, you see that type of netting. So the idea is that the fruit flies are lured by whatever is in the spongy material. They come sit on this sandwich, and the netting on the outside contains an contact insecticide, so that only the flies that sit on it perish. But we want to make this thing biodegradable. So if you look on the right, you can see that we want to try and use a yellow biopolymer, which attracts the fruit flies because they like the colors of fruits. So there are a few pictures of Zane films, but these films are very brittle. So you need to reinforce them. And the material that we want to use for that is nanocellulose fibers, which are like small little whiskers that you add into the mix that strengthen the material. Also, some plasticizers have to be added to make sure that it can be processed in a microcompounder or an extruder. And then finally, to make sure that the flies don't just see something they like, they smell something they like, we want to add in an olfactory attractant. Now, there are three broad categories of various fruit flies attractants. The first being the male lures, which are various different types of plant volatiles. Secondly, pheromones, which are very expensive and only limited to 2 species, I think, at this point. And then thirdly, food odor attractants, which are things that are types of proteins, which typically attract the females, which are the ones that cause the most damage to the fruit because they lay their eggs inside of them. Okay, so for some preliminary results, we did a field trial on a Nova orchard, and you can see in the right-hand side, there's a picture of a standard census bucket trap. And to try and test which type of attractants we should use, we took the chemicals and placed them in that little green capsule, as you can see in the top photo with the yellow sponge inside. And then we place a block of insecticide in the blue lid at the top, and then insert the green capsule over that opening in the lid, and then insert the bucket at the bottom. So then when the fruit fly flies by, they enter through one of the holes there at the top, they get stuck in the bucket, and then you can count them every week. And what we found was that one of the chemicals we chose, putrescine, which smells awful, by the way, really does attract them, as well as Drosophila, which is another category of fruit flies, which are these tiny little, they're literally called small fruit flies, but it's a different genus. And I think you may be familiar with them as gnats, as well as houseflies. So that was great news. And then, as you can see on the left side, we made various different types of little strips in a machine called a microcompounder, where you throw the powder in. It has a screw, as Farirai mentioned, and then it melts it, and out comes a composite. And when you do it at a certain temperature and rotational speed, it retains its yellowish color, as you can see from the strips at the top. But unfortunately, there are still some challenges. So as you can see, the ones at the bottom, if the temperature is too high, they turn black, and that's not what we want. But all in all, the contributions that we hope to make through this project are that we will firstly reduce pesticide use, and secondly, reduce the amount of litter produced on farms, and hopefully get EuroGAP certification for South African farms, and to grow the biopolymer market. So to ensure that these products are not just sustainably used in applications that are available today, but in new products that exploit these materials' specific unique properties. Thank you very much.
Samantha, once again, good morning, everyone. My name, as introduced, is Tshwane Padeng. A master's student at the University of Pretoria's Department of Chemical Engineering. And my research is on cellulose-based polymers as controlled release matrices for insect attractants and repellents. To give a brief background, this study was motivated by the persisting pest problem in the agricultural sector, whereby insects such as aphids, thrips, and mites damage valuable crops by direct feeding and virus transmission, as seen by these images here, whereby the insects attack the leaves and then feed on them and inject some plant viruses affecting the product. So it reduces the crop quality and results in financial losses for the agricultural sector. So to combat this, synthetic pesticides were introduced, and they have been quite effective in addressing this problem, killing the insects. But their main problem is they pose environmental and health hazards in a way that they also kill beneficial insects and pollinators, so they are quite non-selective in killing. And another issue is the contamination of the environment. They contaminate the water, the soil, and the very same crops they are meant to protect. So that's quite unfortunate. We are looking at environmentally friendly pest control measures as our research objectives by applying a push-pull insect control strategy, whereby we use plant-based compounds as insect attractants and repellents instead of these pesticides. As Farah mentioned, these compounds are quite problematic because of their high volatility, which would require frequent reapplication over a shorter period of time, which becomes a costly practice. So to address this issue, we are looking at developing matrices from cellulose-based polymers that will trap these insect attractants and repellents and release them slowly into the environment at controlled and effective rates so that they can last over an extended time period. Our cellulose-based material of choice here is cellulose acetates, and we chose this because it's a widely used thermoplastic cellulose derivative, and compared to cellulose, it's easier to process, and it's also quite soluble in organic solvents, the common ones, so to say. To address the issue of push-pull insect control strategy, as mentioned before, I've mentioned that we are going to be developing cellulose-based matrices that will trap these compounds. So a cellulose acetate matrix that will contain a repellent compound will act as a push agent, pushing insects away from the protected crops, and the matrix containing the attractant will pull them towards a trap where they can be safely and carefully eliminated. And furthermore, the pull strategy can also be used to lure natural enemies and also, attract natural enemies and also beneficial insects such as pollinators. And the advantage of this strategy is that it does not affect non-targeted organisms. So now that we've mentioned our objectives and how we'll go about developing, providing solutions for these problems, we now look at the material development section of this research, whereby cellulose will be sourced from wood pulp, waste paper, which are obtained from trees, and derivatized to cellulose acetate for reasons I've mentioned earlier, because cellulose is difficult to process and is not really soluble in organic solvents. So the cellulose acetate, compared to cellulose, easier to process, even though it has its own challenges, but our research aims at addressing those challenges. So cellulose acetate, the active compounds, which are our attractants and repellents, together with selected nanofillers, will be incorporated to form these materials by means of extrusion compounding, which was addressed before by my colleagues here, and also solvent casting. So these processes will be used to produce these strands as shown by the top right and spaghetti looking like image, and the films at the bottom. So these are some of the products we've produced in our labs. So next slide, please. So with that said, we have produced these materials and we've seen that we were quite successful in developing them. So now we look at how effective they are in terms of achieving our goals. So with these two graphs here, we see that the active compounds were really effective in functioning as plasticizers for cellulose acetate, as shown by the left graph here, whereby a significant reduction in the glass transition temperature of the polymer was achieved as the concentration of the active compounds was increased, which made the material more flexible and easier to process. So this trend is quite shown here by the black line, which is the Fox model, and these data points here represent our compounds. So the second figure here shows how we have achieved the controlled release phenomenon. The active compounds were released at a slow and controlled rate for a period of over 2 months, 70 days to be exact. And here we show that a certain thrips repellent was incorporated into different cellulose acetate matrices with different nanofillers. And in all formulations, it was released at a control rate for a sustained time period. So with that said, we now look at the potential benefits of this project. Starting with agriculture, we are looking at improved crop protection methods, which result in better crop yields and improved security and reduced financial losses for the agricultural sector. And it also goes without saying that for the environment, the reduction of synthetic pesticides is quite important, because we are trying to look at sustainable measures to protect our crops and improve the quality of our crops. So by using a biodegradable polymer matrix and plant-based volatile compounds, we do not have to deal with the bioaccumulation of products and landfills. So, and also this strategy, oh, sorry about that. Prof. Fokke just mentioned here that, our strands will be installed on fruit trees in orchards, whereby they will be used to repel they will be used to repel the insect pests. So back to the topic, we are looking at minimizing damage of the beneficial insects and natural predators. So moving on, the impact of our research on science, society, and the industry. In science, we're looking at the development of new technologies and exploring new research areas whereby our cellulose acetate strands can be processed without the use of plasticizers, which is quite a difficult task, as research shows, because just like cellulose, it has the propensity to melt, to degrade before it melts. So with these active compounds of ours, we are able to also use them as plasticizers to avoid using conventional plasticizers, which may affect the release profiles of our compounds. And also, the development of advanced and applied materials from bio-based polymer nanocomposites, which will function as controlled release matrices. And this won't be limited to just pest control. And various applications can be explored and different compounds can be incorporated into these matrices. For society, safer insect control measures, better crop quality, and recycling are of great importance. In industry, polymer processing companies are at an advantage for this project because they possess the existing technology to process these materials, to develop these materials. So it will be another way of generating an income by producing new materials using existing technologies. And moving right along, the issue of sustainability is quite an important one, as it goes without saying that we need to protect our environment and also find a way to not, how can I say this, not to exploit our resources so that future generations can also have access to these resources. So by using abundant natural resources and plant-based volatile compounds together with cellulose acetate obtained from woods and recycled paper, this project does promote sustainability and also reduction of land pollution by the bioaccumulation of our materials. With that said, this concludes my presentation. Thank you.
So good morning, everyone. I apologize for the annoying hum in the background. I hope that it doesn't bother too many people. Unfortunately, in the control room, we're on site. So yes, but I'll introduce myself quickly. I am Justin Phillips. We did work on starch nanocellulose carrier materials for pesticide applications. Franco and Tabang spoke in depth on how to use that technology in crops. I'm going to focus more on livestock applications for these things, where pesticides, as Franco mentioned, are the go-to resource to get pest control controlled. So we sort of very cool use for cellulose to help out with this, and dextrin starch as well. So dextrin starch is just a form of starch which is water soluble, and then in agriculture that is super useful. If you can actually have a carrier device being something that actually carries your active ingredient that can dissolve in water over a fixed period of time, that is super useful and makes the use of pesticides much more safe and much more accurate and much more effective. So that's the idea behind that. You can't use starch on its own because it doesn't have all the properties you need. And this is where nanocellulose comes to play. So it's a very useful polymer additive, which gives very good properties to composites. A composite being something which is made up of multiple parts. But if you want to work on it on your own, it's very difficult and expensive to work with. Tabang and everyone else has mentioned blastings and temperatures. This makes it very difficult to work with on its own. So they used different things to make it usable. I used starch. So that's why I say combining dextrin and nanocellulose gives you very symbiotic properties. So Sam is going to quickly see if she can show a video with actually being able to extrude the composite. So it was absolutely usable. So you can see it actually coming out of the extruder with very good properties compared to just base starch. So what the nanocellulose actually did there is it made it extrudable, it made it with some usable properties that can actually make a strand. There's a little bubble there at the end. So that's just a little bit of water vapor having been formed because of some temperatures being off or something like that. We could get an optimized setup for the extruder going, which can actually make a really useful compound, which I'm going to go into depth next. So why look at pesticides in the livestock application? Pesticides are useful in livestock and crops. So insect pests, for instance, for crops cause half of crop losses in Africa. This makes pesticides a very, very popular thing. In sub-Saharan Africa, it is very, very popular. Nigeria, for instance, spends around $400 million annually to fight pest insects. For cattle use and livestock, acaricides are very, very useful. And acaricide is actually something that kills ticks. Ticks are cause also a significant amount of bad losses in the agricultural industry. There's a strong correlation between pesticide use and agricultural output. So, the more pesticides you use, the greater your food security. So, pesticide is a very important thing, and it's definitely here to stay if food security is as unstable an issue as it is these days. But however, there is a heavy cost to pesticide use, not only financially, but also in terms of when pesticides are being used ineffectively, they can be dangerous for humans. I believe I read recently that 4 million people are annually poisoned by pesticide use, and the UN actually reports that 200,000 people actually die every year from pesticide poisoning, and this is mostly in Africa because of poor pesticide use strategies. So if you're going to be uneven with your dosages, that inhibits effective use on those expensive acaricides, and then definitely cause a lot of poisonings that we do see. But to optimize this, there are some important things to know. So timing of the application is really, really crucial. You need to dissolve or spread your pesticide over the application in such a way that you can actually get the pesticide to the places that are necessary, and then to effectively get your pesticide to kill your ticks, or to kill your different insects that you want to get rid of. Now, the dosage is also very, very important, so it needs to be well formulated and actually applied over the whole serving. So you need something to allow it to stick to the places where you want to stick. So that's going to be important. But it can also be applied in many ways. So you can apply it directly. You can actually pour your pesticide on your livestock. That's very, very not practical in large-scale use. So spray is also popular, but the most popular by far is a water plunge dip. So essentially a nice little bath for livestock to actually run through. They get covered by the pesticide, but it's in a solution. You can't just have a bath full of pesticide. That's too expensive and too dangerous. So it's like a water bath with a little bit of pesticide in. But you want to spread that pesticide evenly, and you want it to dissolve as time goes by. Ticks, for instance, are also dangerous to human beings, so that needs to also be taken care of. They can cause in human beings diseases like babesiosis, cattle fever, acryliosis, tularemia, endocephalitis, and many other diseases that are very difficult to treat. So we have a set goal. We want to design a water-soluble carrier, so the carrier being something that can carry your pesticide and deliver it over a fixed amount of time, but is also safe. So we want to safely deliver an accurate quantity of pesticide into a solution of water, into your water bath or your cat. This should be done over a fixed amount of time to not leave any traceable effects of the carrier. As many carrier devices are also going to be plastic-like, so they cause pollution. And you don't want to have any oily dispersions when you do that as well. My work followed a lot like Father Rai's work and the other students here working on extra. So I'm not going to go into depth into materials or things like this. I have finished my master's. We have published, you can see at the bottom there, we published in 2020. So if you're interested, there's a lot more to read. But I'm going to summarize some interesting topics for science and industry. So what we did see requires a lot more investigation, because these are very exciting things that require a lot more time to get to the bottom of. But I'm highlighting three things actually. So the picture on the right there, you can see there's like this circle-like structure, a helix-like structure around that rod shape. That helix structure is actually your starch, and we actually got these fatty acids, which is that staff-like structure, to go inside of this helix, which gives it a lot of interesting properties and helps starch stay strong for longer, which is a heavy problem with starch on its own. So we got it right to actually get this fat into the structure, and this is actually called the formulation of a starch fatty complex, or in other words, an amylose lipid complex. And there's a lot of uses for this, even in the food industry. So this is a topic worth investigating, and some would do explain in more detail in the article. Now, the addition of cellulose was really the thing that made this a very useful product and a viable product, especially as a material, because it slowed something called retrogradation. Retrogradation is something that happens with starch every time it is processed. If it's thermally processed, it melts. It causes these morphological, these crystal structures that make it deform, make it brittle, and make it not viable as material. Now, cellulose has now been identified as something that can slow this effect, not completely stop it. But it definitely makes starch viable as a material, especially for this application. And then there were also some exceptionally interesting findings when we used some of these nanoclays. When you get the nanoclays to like split like this, that gives you some awesome mechanical material properties, and this splitting actually occurred over time, even after thermally processed. So this is a very, very interesting topic that we don't even know how to explain yet. We do see it, and we do see the benefits. On the industry side of things, we designed and tested this plant-based polymer, which has some useful properties. Some useful properties for agriculture and keeping humans safe when using it. The carrier device itself, this starch and cellulose composite, is safe for human consumption. So there's applications for it even in the food industry for the carrier device. And it is fully biodegradable. So this is an interesting thing. By definition, biodegradable can mean a lot of things, but biodegradable really actually means if you can spit up into your constituents, CO2 and water, by naturally occurring organisms, then you're actually truly biodegradable. And that is what this is. Cellulose is fully biodegradable. There are these naturally occurring organisms. so you can break it down and make it actually fully biodegradable, not like more conventional plastics. Water soluble, that's a big talking point for the agricultural industry and perhaps the food industry as well. There were also no petroleum-based chemicals used in the carrier product. All the raw materials are naturally occurring, naturally abundant, and definitely safe to the environment to use. We got something that is stable after extrusion, and even in tropic and sub-Saharan conditions, the material kept its composure and could last long, which is, as I say, absolutely important for the agricultural industry. And when it is being dissolved into your water bath, it doesn't form an oily dispersion, so there's no harm to the animal over time for those last couple of cows that run through the water bath. And you can definitely, the interesting thing is that we can manipulate the solution time by having different additives, changing the way you extrude it. And it's very, very sensitive to these additives as well, and certain additives. So that was definitely interesting. Now, regarding industry sustainability, there is also a lot of carrier materials that we can now produce with these naturally occurring sustainable resources. So cellulose being the foremost one here. You can get cellulose which is naturally occurring, and cellulose which is completely sustainable as well. And that's really what makes cellulose a good product, and most other carbohydrate polymers as well, starch being one of them. The tested application of the material can definitely help save lives, because we have something that is stable, we have something that is useful, we have something that you can hold, that you can work with, and that is completely safe, which then, if used correctly and used efficiently, will help ensure food stability. And then finally, we found another very useful application for this nanocellulose. When you combine it with starch, you can actually have a very useful product.
That concludes our student presentation. So thank you so much to Mashudu, to Bethuel, Fararai, Franco, Tabang, and Justin. Fascinating work, really. It's so amazing what we can do with wood and cellulose and recycled paper and all the good stuff that our industry makes. So really, really thank you so much for all the effort you've put into your presentations and all the work you've been doing on your research, and to your supervisors and to your lecturers and profs. Really thank you so much for all the work you do behind the scenes. I'm going to hand over to Jane Maloney. She's the Executive Director of the Paper Manufacturers Association, just for some closing remarks. Over to you, Jane.
Hi, thanks Samantha, and thanks to all of you. It's been a great day so far. Yeah, what can I say? We actually have an education support services section of PAMSA, and the process research unit is part of that. And we've given bursaries to over 99 people over the last 10 years. 69 of those have actually graduated, and if we add 12 as part of this, the DSI project here, if we add the 12 that are currently in the system and you all pass, which we hope you will, that will bring us to 81. Most of the students that haven't actually completed their degree are those that are working. So that's what's so exciting. This initiative was actually set up in order to encourage very bright people to come into our sector. And I think from that perspective, we have succeeded. I'd like to thank the Department of Science and Innovation for their sector innovation funding. We've done a very good job of partnering and of co-funding. And I'd like to thank Sunita, Mike, and Julie, who do all the hard work behind the scenes in order to make that program actually work. So it's brilliant to see projects that go all the way from encouraging increased demand for biopolymers, nanocellulose, and indirectly fruit boxes. So it does truly improve the profitability of our sector. The more fruit that is unspoiled, the more fruit boxes we can manufacture, and the more exports, and so the more profitable our sector. Sometimes this research, which is all pre-competitive, also then gets built on by our member companies, and then that has further benefits. So it's very exciting, and I'd just like to thank all of you for attending, and I hope that some of you will join us for the next session too. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Jane. So that really concludes things. I hope you will join us next week. Same time, different link. You need to register for next week's on a separate link. And if you don't have that, just drop us an email and we will send that to you with pleasure. So thank you. Have a fantastic Friday and a wonderful weekend.